light on to show you what I'm doing, but just sticking with the standard 8,000 ISO, 8 seconds, and then getting the shot and doing the full wide arching panorama. And then I went for the Brady Bunch panorama, you know, where you get 9 on one row, 9 3 on one row, 3 on the next, and 3 on the last. That was really scary when it turned down. It looked like your eyeballs were cyborg. So now we're at the last location with the tree, and we're just gonna light paint it, shoot it, and get some warmth because it is really cold. 38 degrees cold in June.
Oh. Middle of June, 38 degrees. Wow.
Yeah, right.
The Milky Way is so huge. We were noticing that when we were down for shot number 9 or 10 at your parents' house with the
farmland?
Yeah, was that 9?
8.
Number 8. The Milky Way seemed really bright, but not big. And from here, this elevation, it looks like it's amplified almost.
It's bigger.
Like it feels bigger, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's
it's
a bit
huge.
of that. I think it's because the lower contrast edges of it are visible here that weren't there, so it seems larger in size.
It's just insane. It's
almost like we've zoomed into it.
Yeah, it's so incredible. Loving it.
Oh, I guess I might as well show those pictures. Why not? Occupy Mars. I have an Occupy shirt that's waiting for me in a P.O. box that I didn't grab yet. Sorry, Sam. Maybe I turn us down this music. And so the panorama at Oregon in Critter Lake is so different. To clarify a little bit about what we were saying on there is just you go out. In fact, let me clarify it this way. And welcome in, guys, to Milky Way Wednesday. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures, and I'm seeing your comments on here. Awesome. Hey, guys, welcome in. Looks like we have a lot of you guys here right now. Looks like 5 total right now, but it's close to Christmas. People are busy. People are trying to find those presents. People will come later and watch these replays. So this is the last Milky Way Wednesday of the year. I'll be back on, I guess, January 7th week. So that's what? January 9th is the Wednesday? Yeah, January 9th. January 9th, I'll be back with the Milky Way Wednesday during a month that actually shows the Milky Way core. So we're going to be so stoked to be back there. Kava, hey man, welcome in. I see that a message has been redacted, so something was said that you didn't want to have on there, but hey, how's it going? Hey. So quickly, let me clarify a little bit about what we're talking about here. And as we're talking about clarity, hey Jeff Anderson, hey Chris, hey Kathy, everybody is showing up now with comments. Awesome. Hey guys, Jeff Anderson, I need to talk to you and Teresa Rice and Mary Beth Kaczynski so that we can talk about our listener adventure out there in Oregon. So look for a message from me, man. Hopefully you guys can get up. What up, yo? Says Mary Beth. So let's hop over here to my iPad. And let's talk about this. Milky Way clarity. So specifically what Brendan and I were just saying is that it seems so bigger. Why does the Milky Way seem bigger? Well, let's just draw it in the way that I like to draw it the most. Quickly, like this. So imagine that's an arcing Milky Way, and we're just kind of paying attention to the core. Well, around the core, you got detail. And you got this detail. Let's go for a different color now. Bring in a little different. You got these white spots and dark spots on the Milky Way. The dust lanes, the negative space, the actual stars that are so bright. So imagine that this fuzzy caterpillar was a Milky Way. Malelo David, hey. Awesome. Welcome in. Hello, everybody from Kava. Hey. Sorry, he says. No worries. I just was making fun of the fact that it had a redacted comment, so no problem at all. So in this view that we have of the Milky Way, imagine you're at a location that has way decent low-level light pollution. You got the Milky Way core up there, and the conditions are just doing something that have some issue with seeing. There's just a little bit of separation between you and the Milky Way of our atmosphere, whether the atmosphere is highly volatile in movement just because of the temperature. There is seeing, transparency, and cloud cover that you look at when you talk about having clarity looking at objects in the night sky. Well, the seeing and transparency might be way way down, even though the cloud cover could be 100% clear. And so there's these objects. Imagine, let's see, let's do a different dark color of blue. I think that might show up on here. Yeah, perfect. Imagine these detail, like the Ryofuki lines that come up there, and detail that pops around. You can kind of see these lines. Well, in an area that has somewhat good seeing, but a bad transparency night, but a really great low cloud cover, you look at the Milky Way, and the Milky Way looks as big as the caterpillar colors of white, yellow, and orange. Then you go to an area where these darker blue streaks that I have done are now this. And I'm drawing them as best I can to get them to show up. Let's do another light color of blue. Let's make this really show up. And so when you look at this, let's use gray and cover like this. The Milky Way with the colors went from here to here. That's the size of the Milky Way with the colored section. In the new section that you're at, like say Crater Lake, the Milky Way extends out to here. So you have this bigger looking Milky Way core. And Brenda and I are sitting there and we're looking at this going, oh man, that looks huge. It almost looks like we have zoomed in on this Milky Way. Can I actually zoom in? Let me go like this. It looks like we zoomed in on the core and we could see all of it with great detail. But instead, what's really happening is all of that low contrast objects and low density visual, just you can't see very well, edges of the Milky Way core are visible. And for many, many factors. And we're going to talk about those factors today. So let's look at some example images from many different locations. And so, can you give me tips for Milky Way, Malala says. Yes, Malala. I think it's Malala. Absolutely, we will be. But specifically tonight, the Milky Way tips will come with lens tips as well as location tips. And so we're going to break all of that down. In fact, let me go back to my iPad, and I'm just going to give you guys a short list of what we're going to talk about today. Let's take a white pencil and zoom into this area. Come on. First things first is we're going to talk about clarity with lenses. So you're going to update your clarity with lens, a different lens, a purposeful change in the lens that we'll talk about that we have mentioned in the past. 2, we're going to talk about clarity with location. And so to break down clarity with location, this is going to have a bunch of different segments, an A, B, C, D segment. First off, we're going to look at 4 locations on photopills. 4 is not spelled with the number 4, O-U-R, Aaron. It is spelled with an F. 4 locations. Actually, is it 4? I think it's actually 5. It is 5 locations. So scratch that. 5 locations. We're going to go into photopills. We're going to identify the time that this was taken, the location of the Milky Way in the sky based on a degree of altitude. We're going to look at that and compare these 5 different locations based on that, as well as we're going to look at conditions. Now, the conditions are going to have to be guessed. Clear dark sky and clear outside both do not give me archive data. Unless someone out there knows more than I do about that, we can't get archive weather data on the actual predictions that they gave us for the clear seeing, transparency, and cloud cover. Is that a dog barking outside? Maybe I should shut my window. The conditions of the night. Never have they actually had dogs barking out there, and I decided my window opened the night, and it was a bad time. Then we're going to consider also elevation. There's elevation changes in all of these locations. And so we're going to talk about these locations and talk about their elevation changes as well as light pollution. So we're going to look at all these factors of these locations and compare the raws and how they look compared to each other. So let's get down with some basics. In fact, clarity with lens, I should talk about exposure as well. I'm going to talk about exposure that you're going to do. So Malala, you're going to get some exposure. So sweet, hey, can you get star trails of 3 stars? You can get star trails of 3 stars. I guess we're talking about something else in there, maybe even... Okay, I caught up. Astrophotography in Chicago with the light pollution. What can you see? Maybe 3 stars? Get star trails with it. Go for it. Tom's right. Tom's right, Mary Beth. So Kathy went out to Burlington. Lots of stars there among the farmer's field. Oh, yeah. Get out there, different locations. So let's start off with the discussion on lenses and this guy. So let's go big on Aaron. And we're going to show you guys lenses. The reason why I want to talk about these lenses, the one that's on right now is the 15 to 30 Tamron. And so I can't show you guys the differences there, but we've talked about this before, so we'll make it fast. Look at the aperture. Inside this lens is a big open hole. So let's go smaller. Let's take over to the next page. Oh, not that. Let's go to the next page this way. And where's my pen at? On the outside. So your lens, let's do it this way. Your lens has a gap, and that gap, how much space it has at a full wide open aperture is its, widest it can go. And what we're looking at right here in this lens, let me go really close to the camera so you can see, is a wide open aperture. Actually, is it? Let me just make sure. Let's go full screen so you can see the changes here. This is my Rokinon. It actually has an aperture manual, a manual aperture, so you can change it with just turning this part right here on the side. And so this is closing it down. Let's go as wide as it can go. Cool. That's as wide as it can go at 1.4, and I usually have it 1 stop down. Okay, come on. What? I'm pulling the wrong way. Okay, 1 stop down. That's f2. So the difference between f2 and 1.4 is this. If I can just do it without tilting too much and changing the view. So you can see how losing a little bit of open space with the f2 is not that big of a deal because it's still crazy wide open. So my aperture is wide open at f1.4, and I stop it down to f2, and that's on my Rokinon. On my Rokinon, I do that, as well as on, well, maybe not as well. I don't do it on a 50. So check out this 50. That's the 50. That's f1.8 at the widest. This one is completely wide open because it's disconnected from a camera and it doesn't have a manual change. Let's go on this side. If I compare these side by side, let's go full screen before I do that. Compare these side by side. Let's go out this way and go out the same way on both of them. See the difference in size? That's a 1.8 versus a 1.4. The changes are miraculous. And this is stopped down to f2, and then this is still at f1.8. So technically it looks smaller by our eyes, but it is more open than this one on the right. This one on the right is less open, f2 versus this f1.8 right now. So these wide open apertures give you a difference in clarity versus the f2.8 that is on that lens. And I'm going to show you that right now with an example image from Brendan Porter, my partner in Photog Adventures. I love using these two images side by side to show this off. In fact, they were in the graphic. So let's pull them up. In fact, I think of everything I got ready, I didn't grab those two images yet. So let's go to Brendan's pics, and I'll make it go to that screen in a second once I pull them up. Okay, perfect. So you know what? I'm going to pull them up in preview because if I can have them side by side, it'll be easier. So this is a large 61.9 meg file. So that's going to take a little bit of time opening, and then I'm going to switch the screen out and go small. So let's go small so you guys can see what I'm looking at here. So you guys have seen this before, but maybe some of you on here like Malala have not. And so let's look at the differences. Right away, you can see a clarity difference. You can just see it looking at it, despite the resolution of this live stream, despite the resolution that's happening on the streaming. You guys can still tell that there's a huge difference here. Let's zoom in. And I don't want to do that. Give me a hand tool. Come on. Let me just use my trackpad. I'll put this down in the center because we're focusing on the Milky Way core. Man, when I don't know if it looks that way to you guys in this feed, but when I move this around, it sparkles a little bit. There's so many stars visible. So can you see the difference in detail in this dust lane versus this dust mud? This is like a dust lane, and this is a mud lane, and this is a bunch of spilled milk, while this is a bunch of spilled sand on the ground. Let me zoom in even further. I like showing off this section of the Milky Way when we compare these kind of things. So you can see where they start to have issues in your shot just because you're having a little bit of star trailing, a little too long exposure. This is a 50 millimeter pano, so a 50 millimeter cannot go too long without star trailing. And this is wide at 15 millimeter, and so it could go longer, but you can just see the difference in the clarity on the stars right away. Just side by side, right away. Obvious. It is just so obvious. There's also another element here working for us that isn't in this image. Do you guys know by chance? Probably not. You probably can't guess. But if you look at these two images, you're looking at one image right here that was captured in a single image. Single image, tilted on its side, vertical pano, no stitching, just one single image. I say pano, but I shouldn't have said pano. It's just a vertical orientation of this shot. Then you have an actual pano taken with many images at 50 millimeter. And so a lot of frames in here. To get clarity and have a better crisper shot, you can still take this Tamron and do it maybe at 30 millimeter. And I don't know if you really have to, but if you zoom in a little bit, you'll have some distortion off of it. And then you take a pano, pop, 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 and all of that extra clarity and extra, I shouldn't say clarity, all that extra detail, extra data, extra information, and going higher resolution is going to make something look like this image on the right, and it'll look better. This isn't a one-to-one comparison saying Brendan's 50 millimeter f2 or f1.2 is a fantastic lens and Tamron lens is crap. No, it's saying there's some techniques that you should take care of to make sure that you get better clarity, and panoramas is one of them. Now, when you're taking a panorama, there's something you need to consider, which is what I have here on my iPad, is your actual exposure. So now May New Moon says, why not stop down and track? And you say, well, honestly, if you track, this whole discussion is completely different. Because you're tracking with the stars, you can go long exposure, you can get great color because it's got long shutter, and you have pinpoint precision on all your stars. So tracking is by far a much more fantastic way to do this. It's an extra complex process. It's a very complex post-processing. Well, not every time, depending on your foreground that you're mixing in. And it is extra money, but not serious extra money. I mean, this lens is $300 right now, or you can buy a star tracker for $300. So it's your choice on how you spend your money. Also, Mike Spivey says, or Spivey, you know, Mike, I never asked you if it's Spivey or Spivey, but Mike says, looks like the left one's a little out of focus, and I agree. It's not just that it looks different. I think it is a little different focus. Looking at some of these big orbs, that's not star trailing. That's just a little off focus. And that's because Brendan doesn't adhere to my religion of Carson Lumiloop using. And so he gets his focus based on instinct, and he does a fantastic job with it, especially when he has a panorama that gets, doesn't give away how focused it actually is. And so I think it turns out great most of the time, but in this case, it is a little bit more out of focus and overexposed. Overexposed? What are you talking about, overexposed? Well, look at this. This is a histogram. Oh, there's a question on here. Was the 50 on the right and the 14 on the left? You're right. I'm sorry I didn't say that enough times. On the right is a 50 millimeter Pano f1.2, and on the left is a Tamron 15 to 30 out at 15 millimeter. So I hope that answers that. Awesome. The new Noct is the manual focus. I guess you're talking about another piece of lens. I will step out. Maybe Rob's got this one. I haven't seen many Rob comments, but I think Rob's got it if you guys have any questions on that. So back to the histogram. If you're going to get an exposure of the Milky Way, pen, okay, here we go. You want to make sure that you get a proper exposure for what is the detail at the core. If you're doing light painting, you'll see in my examples how the histogram can be completely different. But when you don't have light painting or you don't have a mirrored reflection of the sky, you'll see typically this. What it's telling us, and we've mentioned it in the past before, this section right here is a spike of black. So your foreground is mostly black, and so the foreground is so much in that information area that's all black. It's not gray, and it's not pure cut and completely underexposed clipping black, but it is a dark black, and it's a huge amount of it, and then it spikes like that. So then you don't want to have all of this mashed together. You could have a histogram that looks like that, where you're underexposing and everything's mashed up on the left. You want that separation that's happening between here and here. Is it important how big of a separation? What if your separation is only like this? What if your separation is only like this? What if your separation's even bigger? It doesn't matter. Just try and have a separation between the darkness of black foreground and the night sky. This section right here is your night sky with the peak towards some of the, like as it gets more to the right, more of the stars, the whites of the core, stuff like that, as it gets towards a midpoint. And the key thing is that your midpoint comes and crosses the middle. If it crosses the middle like this, don't fret. That might be a little overexposed, but most likely you're okay. When you're capturing things like the Orion Nebula that Mary Beth recently caught, or you're capturing things like this core, this really, really bright, high brightness area of the core, you can overexpose it. And when you overexpose something like this, I mean, look at the detail difference between what this shape is, what this is, this nebula up here. I believe Lagoon Nebula, Aaron, you're forgetting. Don't forget. I'm going to look it up, but I'm not going to. Rob, do that for me, man. That right there is Lagoon Nebula, I believe, that close to the core. Check it out. But right here, this section, if you overexpose that white, then you lose detail. What happens is the white shades that are happening in here, you completely expose them too high. They start blending in together. Imagine it like this. Let's draw from a black screen. You have black. I'm going to do it like this. Come on, is that the smallest pen I can get? Okay, it is. All right, white dots. Just like going out of focus, when you have a overexposed white dot, you're kind of accenting all the white that it has. That white dot can become this. Just huge. You are bringing out as much white as you possibly can, and you're starting to clip it. And it does make them larger in the image. Now we're talking on a small scale, but when there's a bunch of them all next to each other and you've overexposed, they just look like this versus looking like this. So the same white dots that are in this image, oh, I hit play. No music background. In this image, the white dots that are in here that are billions of stars are just a smudge on this side because of an exposure issue too. Not only focus, not only the fact that it doesn't have as much zoomed in detail because it's been set and focused for a foreground, but this right here is just overexposed a tad and blends things together. You can see how overexposed it is right here when you have some detail in this that you don't have here. That can happen because your aperture is not that can happen because your aperture is not huge and it lets in more light. When you have a lot of space for the aperture, like a lot of space in your aperture, a lot of openness, it's a big old light bucket, and that light bucket receives little detail as well as big white detail. When your aperture is smaller, like an f2.8, like this Tamron, which, do I have any examples of that? That 100 millimeter, maybe. Let's just find out. All right, this is a Canon 100 millimeter. I don't even know. We recently broke off the ring, so let me grab that. Yeah, it's 2.8. It is a 2.8. So the ring that has unglued itself from the lens says it's an f2.8. So this being an example of an f2.8 aperture. So there's 2.8. To make sure that it's not stopped down. No, it isn't at all. Good. 2.8, and I did it again. Cap. I did it. This is f2.8 right next to, let me go full screen so you guys can see that in more detail, next to an f1.4. 1.4 on top, f2.8 on the bottom. See how it even tapers down before it gets to the end of the lens, just because it's a very long 100 millimeter. So the idea is when you have less of a light bucket, you're not going to get some of those finer details, and you're not going to have as much easy time trying to get those smaller, dimmer star details. And in this image, in this image right here, you can see how that is lost on this section of the sky. So, boom, hit it. I hit this exposure part of our list perfectly. Well, no, I actually think I went too long, but I hit it. We're set. Let's mark it off the list. Oh yeah, I think I'm on a completely different section. There we are. Boom. Clarity with lenses and exposure. Make sure you do an exposure differently. Underexpose just slightly. Don't overexpose your whites so that you can get it. On top of that, if you have too high of ISO, and it's talking really too high of ISO, you will lose more of your color temperature, color detail of your stars, and you'll have all whites. You'll see in some of my images where I go as high as 12,800 for an ISO, I don't have colorful stars, I have white dots. Then you go and do star tracking at a much lower ISO, longer exposure, and those stars are crazy colorful. So much different than what you got when you're shooting with a high ISO single image for only 15 seconds. It's just such a different world, and we usually lose that color data because of our exposure set with a high ISO. And so look at that kind of stuff. So now we're going to talk about location, and we're going to tackle this by looking at all of my examples that I have on here. So let's go through that. You know what I'd like to do? Sometimes it feels that way. Hey, Joe Choi and David. Looks like more of you have joined us. Welcome in. We're talking about Milky Way clarity. Awesome. We have 29 of you right now. Thank you guys for being a part of this. And Aaron's going to move something around. He's going to grab this reflector. No, I guess I can't. Let me do it this way. No. This app. I just want to move you by itself, but it's not going to let me move it into and share. Oh, it will. Kind of. Nope. Lightroom just does not work that way. So I can't show the Lightroom and work that way. So we'll just write down the notes. You guys take my word for it. This first location is the salt flats. Let me start the information down below. So I have a salt flats image. Let's go a little fatter pen. Salt flats. Salt flats, we're going to talk about its light pollution. We're going to talk about its elevation and stuff like that. Devil's Garden, Escalante. I'll just say Devil's G, like Photo G Adventures, Escalante, Esca. And then the next location we're going to look at, all of these images are RAWs, right, by the way. These are not processed. These are just the RAWs. Goblin Valley. And the next one, this one's Crater Lake. And the last one is a very dark sky site, International Dark Sky Site, Natural Bridges National Monument. So Natural Bridges. So we're going to tackle each one of these locations based on elevation. We're going to go elevation information, and we're going to tackle light pollution. Those are factors that we can check now that even though the conditions of those nights are going to have to be guessed upon based on the sky. And so the seeing, the transparency, and how all of that worked, we're not going to talk about that in these images. We're just going to tackle what's the difference in elevation and the distance from light pollution and the direction these images are looking. So let's go into my iPad. The question from Joe Choi is, are these with the 5D? In fact, every single one of these images were taken in June with the Rokinon lens on the 5D Mark IV. And so that is something I wanted to do and keep them consistent. You'll notice that almost every single image is the same ISO. They're all taken at 8 seconds, ISO 8000, except for the Devil's Garden one that I went for an ISO 10,000, and it was all based on my histogram. I was just trying to expose a little bit more to the right than I was getting. And we'll talk about the histograms of each one of these images here in a second. But let's go back to the iPad. So there's my notes. There's my quick handwriting, smudgy marker look. I wanted to be big enough so that you guys can read it, and also... yeah, I guess that's all I want to say. It's big enough so you guys can read it, so it looks smudgy. This information at Salt Flats, Devil's Garden, Goblin Valley, Crater Lake, Natural Bridges. Let's look at elevation. Oh, you know what? I also wanted to see, this is one thing I love about this app. I need some space, and I'm going to move something over. Let's put these all the way to the edge and add in here, this pen. I'm going to put in altitude, because we're going to handle where the Milky Way core was as well. I want to know, is the Milky Way core up higher where it's clearer already versus just where we were sitting at elevation and versus the light pollution? And let me make some more space right here. So, hey Rob, you want to do me a favor, man? This is going to be delayed, but I think Rob can do it. We're going to go to... where is my browser window? Rob, if you have a second, I want you to go to lightpollutionmap.info. Oh, you know what? Don't even do that. Go to Instagram, Photog Adventures, and I think I never did Astrophotog. I don't think I updated all of Astrophotog. Let's see if I did. We're going to see if all the images are on here. No, they're not. I stopped and I was only on Photog Adventures. So, Rob, going with Photog Adventures, I need you to write down the information based on what I posted. You'll scroll down and you'll see all these images. For instance, here towards the end, Natural Bridges. And you'll see in the post, Bortles Class 1. So give me those numbers, Rob. Hook me up with those and I will do the other information. We're going to do this search together. So, first off, let's see. Let's go into PhotoPills. Let's do it from PhotoPills. Right here, we're going to start off with Salt Flats because I know exactly where we were, right at this location. And it's out here. And it is, oh man, we were just so fortunate to have the mirroring happening with the water at this location. So then I need to change the date. Let's look at the image and change the info to the date. It is at June 2nd, 11:08 p.m. So June 2nd, changing the date over here to June 2nd, 2018. And the time is going to be 11:08 p.m. So we're going to get precisely what was happening at that time. So 11:08 p.m., that's where the Milky Way core is, and we're going to look at this information down here. The visibility of the galactic core talks about the actual azimuth that it's visible from to. And in the galactic center, it says at this time. See where that is on the scrub, 11:08? If I change this to any other time, right down here at the bottom, this data changes. So if I go back to 11:08, which of course it changed everything, didn't it? It even changed the date. 11:08 p.m. on June 2nd. That puts us at this exact azimuth. Altitude of, or I should say altitude of the Milky Way core, 5.6 elevation. So let's make that note. Elevation, let's do that in, do it in orange. Why not? Elevation 25.6 degrees. Perfect. Let's go to the next one. I guess I'm on this app. Go over here. So from this, what else did I want to get? I think the current location of the pin, if I go, ooh, is that distortion happening on your guys' end or just my headphones? Hopefully just my headphones. If I turn on the pin-to-pin geodetic info, I can get the actual information of the elevation. So right here, just between these two, it says it's at 1282 meters high. So let's just go by meters, and 1282. Perfect. This is giving me the information based on where the red pin is, the altitude number, and the difference of the black pin. So since this is the salt flats, nothing ever changes. But you'll see in these other locations how the black pin will have a difference, and the red pin says it's at 1.2, or I should say 1282 meters. So write that down. Altitude. Oh, you know what? I put that information in the wrong spot. And elevation. 1282. I think it was 1282 meters. 1282 meters. Yes. Cool. Let's go ahead to another location. I'm going to load a point of interest, and I'm going to go down to Owachomo. And let's make sure we find out where we were at Natural Bridges. Natural Bridges. Yep, I was at this location looking back this way. So what time did this occur? Let's look at Owachomo. This is June 24th at 2:58. So June 24th. Okay, good. Yeah, you can see everything. June 24th. I'm moving on the iPad over to the date and time, and I'll switch the screen over once I have this reference done. So I'm reading the reference of 2:58:48 a.m. June 24th, 4:28 a.m. Okay, sweet. Now let's look at it. So this is where the Milky Way core was in relation to me, the red pin. I'm going to hit the pin-to-pin geodetic info just to get my pin over here. My elevation is now 1820 meters. 1820. So elevation down here. 1820 meters, and the altitude of the Milky Way core at this time. Down here, the elevation it says of the Milky Way core, galactic center, 17.6 degrees. So 17.6. Over to my, this is where I was going to go. Oops. Four fingers to swipe over there. 17.6. What was that? I think it was 17.6. I moved. Yep, 17.6. Awesome. So 17.6 degrees. Put that in the right spot. Hopefully, Rob, that you're able to get that. It may draw more people. It's more science. Hey, guys. We could hear it, FYI, but don't think anyone cares. Okay, cool. The static that was happening was also audible to you. Thanks for letting me know, Joe. I wonder what caused it, actually. Not sure what could have been. But continuing on, let's go to the next spot. We're going to look at Devil's Garden, this location in Devil's Garden. Now, at this specific arch, I don't know if I have a good enough pin on here. I bet I don't. Let's look at, are there any Escalante shots? No. So we're going to pull back, and we're going to have to travel to Escalante on our own. So Escalante going down to Devil's Garden. Oh yeah, a little distortion there again. Okay, are you Devil's Garden? No, you're not. Doing it without the Google Map overlay. Let's make sure that I have that. Google Map Hybrid. Let's do terrain. Let's see if that will actually give me the Devil's Garden road. This might be it. Is this Devil's Garden? Dead Man Ridge. Continue down. Continue down. Too far. Actually, it's even harder for me to recognize on here because I've looked at the satellite map so many times. And Devil's Garden pops up on Google Maps. So let's just do it over here. Let's use a quick reference so that we can find it. If I find it on Google Maps really easily, 20 minutes. 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 Devil's Garden parking area Escalante, and then look at the satellite image of this, I can recognize when I'm looking at it on here. So I got that swerving river, I got a short road, and I even have this little outcropping right here. So I'm going to use that to identify it. In fact, we were right on top of it. Look at that. Here's Devil's Garden right there. Metate Arch, Devil's Garden camping area, perfect. And just behind Metate Arch is this other arch. And I believe the rock that makes up, yeah, because that's where I fell. We came around that. Okay, I believe the arch that is this spot is what we're looking at. So let's just put down a pin. I was standing in a bunch of trees, bushes right around there. So we'll guess that that's the rough area. The specific time is June 10th, 1204. June 10th, 1204. June 10th, 1204. And you know what? We're going to go ahead and just do Crater Lake next. And so we don't have to do any more of these because they do take more time than I was hoping. So 1204, we'll do this area and then we'll go to Crater Lake and show that spot. So June 10th, 1204, look in this direction. That's what I was seeing with the Milky Way core. And the Milky Way core elevation's 18.4 degrees. Oh, I'm not drawing. 18.4, as well as, oh, I'm getting confused on which one to change. The location right here, let's change my pin to pin. Bring that pin up next to me. The elevation I was at actually was 1614, something like that. I'm once again swapping the place. 1614 meters. Okay, Crater Lake. Let's do Crater Lake now. So Crater Lake was on what day? This is June 15th, 1137. Now, Crater Lake, I do have a pin of point of interest on Crater Lake, so let me go where this is. And that is the spot that we took 2 years ago. Let's go to the area that we captured this one, at the Watchman Overlook. I was at this spot right here, and it said it's going to be, oh, you know what? Let me make sure you guys can, oh, you guys can't see. This is the area, but I'm changing the time. So June 15th, and time is 11:37. 11:37 p.m. Cool. All right, Milky Way. It is 14.6. And then it is pin to pin. Move my pin just right next to me because I don't want to go down the slope. Altitude's 2310. 2310. That, my friends, is going to be the biggest factor right there. So, whew, boom. You guys got the information for me, Rob or Mary Beth. Looks like Crater Lake saying Bortle 1. And I can't wait to go. Okay, so it looks like I lost Rob, but Mary Beth gave me the information. So the Bortle scale for this area at Crater Lake is a 1. Bortle scale for natural bridges was a 1. Bortle scale for Salt Flats and Devil's Garden, let's just do that together. And we're going to do that fast with light pollution map info. lightpollutionmap.info, and I'm just going to click on it. One thing that's awesome about this light pollution map is when you click on a spot, it quickly gives you a detailed bit of information on the location right about here. And Bortle scale 3. And then Devil's Garden Escalante. One thing I want to do before I leave this area is point out that Bortle scale 3 and looking towards these light pollution spots, which is, if you remember that image, man, there's a lot of light pollution right in the center of my image right here that was glowing yellow. So let's go down to Devil's Garden Escalante. Orderville, Escalante. Okay, all of this area is going to be the same, so let's just say, yes. I know the short road, we were really close to it. It's off of this little hook, right? Or was it a little, oh, that's the shape. That's the shape I'm looking for right here. So it's roughly here. And it says Bortle scale 1. and I keep clicking it off, but it's Bortle scale 1, so now we have it. So let's look back at my information on here, guys. We're going to break this down, the science, the details, the differences between these shots, and we're going to look at them afterwards. So this right here, we have 12 minutes. Yes, we'll go 15 more minutes. 15 more minutes and we'll make this work. So let's go ahead, take my screen off, and let's look quickly at these images. This is a raw image of Crater Lake. Looking at the core, taken with a ISO 8000, 8 seconds. So that condition is the same there. Look at the core. Look at the detail on the Lagoon Nebula, I believe it was, but we lost Rob on that, so I'll zoom in there. I think I can keep that zoom level for all of them. Now, this is, let's do natural bridges. This is what the Milky Way core looked like here. Lagoon Nebula, I might have to zoom a little bit more out on this shot. Milky Way core, you can see my focus is a little soft. I got a little bit of coma happening on these right there that is just not perfect. Salt flats, let's look at that. Not the reflected one, but the core up here. The detail I hope is coming through on the stream. That beard, Anna Roberts says. Yes, I have grown a little bit of a beard, and I'm going to have fun growing it further, but it doesn't change me. It's a costume I'm wearing for a little while. This is Lagoon Nebula. You can see a little difference in the detail here, but I'm also at a worse light pollution area, and here's Devil's Garden, a crazy good Bortle scale, and boom, okay. Sweet. So we've looked at these, but it's really hard without side-by-siding, looking at exactly what's changed, and this one specifically is a 10,000 ISO. So let's look at the differences here. Boom. When it comes, oh, I better put myself back on here. Show off that beard. So here we go. Look at this. Let's use the blue color when we look at who has the best. Well, Bortle scale tie at 1. This at Salt Flats, man, it's a light pollution 3. So it's probably the worst image, right? No. Natural bridges, it has 1820 versus 2310. So 2310 elevation is crazy high. But then this, well, actually, over at Devil's Garden, had the highest Milky Way core. The higher in the sky, at zenith, all the stars that you want to capture, or if you want to capture something with your telescope and look at it, if you look at it at zenith, you're going to have the least amount of disruption in the atmosphere. That disruption that's happening from atmospherics, from humidity, movement in the air, stuff like that, that is a factor of transparency and seeing. Looking up at the zenith, you're going to see a much more clear path. Zenith is basically the highest point that anything as it travels up in that arc that is the ecliptic. You got that arc that goes up and it hits the apex and then comes down. And when it's at that apex, they call it the zenith. And so the zenith right here, it's not on a zenith. The Milky Way core, I should do a video entirely on that with where the Milky Way core is the highest, but it all depends on your personal location. If I'm here at this latitude, then I have a very pattern-like Milky Way core height every year. But if I'm in southern hemisphere, the Milky Way core is straight above my head, all the way on the horizon over there, and then all the way on the horizon over here by the morning. So it changes all over the place in the southern hemisphere. So you look at having a higher element, this is pretty great. This is a great height. This is an amazing elevation change. And then these are amazing Bortle scale. So I did say it was Lagoon earlier, Rob says. Awesome. He was here, but he's a little busy, and it was Lagoon Nebula. Whew. For some reason, I doubted myself just a little bit because I hadn't said that recently, and I wanted to double check myself. I feel dumb listening to you talk about science stuff, Jordan Yance says. Well, we're going to feel dumb watching your new project and seeing how it is that, I don't want to say anything about it, but I'm excited to see what your new project is and follow through on that. So we look at Crater Lake. Why does Crater Lake have such an amazing looking Milky Way? It's in the darkest location you can be on our Bortle scale. It is, when you look at the light pollution map, let's pull out and look at Crater Lake right here. Okay, right here, Crater Lake. When you're looking towards the Milky Way, looking towards the Panorama June Milky Way, you're looking off in this direction. And you're looking away from the light bloom of Klamath Falls, and you're looking away from Chemult and Chemult. You know, I haven't figured out how to say that, but who gives? So right here, you're looking between this gap. You have this brilliant gap right here to look at the Milky Way. Now, when it comes to looking at the Milky Way and Crater Lake in the later part of the year, it's not the same. I mean, you're looking towards a lot more in Medford and stuff, and so it's great to have the early Milky Way season. Oh, man, that panorama from March through June. March, you can't get up there without hiking through snow. Even in May, you can't get up there sometimes without getting through snow. It opens in June, and that's when you get up there. It's the best month to go to Crater Lake. And so when we see that Crater Lake is 2310 meters, oh my gads, no wonder part of the Milky Way that is normally just slightly visible is incredibly visible. When you're sitting there looking at the Milky Way core in a dark site, like Kathy was out with us at Devil's Garden, she's seen the crazy clear skies and dark skies of Escalante and how amazing the entire Milky Way looks with your naked eye. Wow. Then Kathy is going to go to Crater Lake with us this year, and she's going to see it, and she's going to know what we're saying. Oh my gosh, it looks bigger. It looks closer, like I've zoomed in on it. It's just, with my naked eye, I can tell it's different. And it's because, thanks to conditions of location, I don't know if you see me circle this enough, that elevation change. It even is a lower altitude in the sky when I captured that picture, but compared to, the Devil's Garden location and altitude, it requires other elements to make it better. So let's look at these images. These images, again, are all RAWs, and when you look at them, the Milky Way core looks pretty similar, and depending on your post-processing, they're going to come out in different ways. I mentioned I wanted to talk about the histogram, so let's do the histogram. Let's make it big. I really can't make it taller, but I can at least make it wider. So looking up here, if you see my cursor flashing in that corner, that's where we're paying attention right now. So here's a Milky Way of a reflected Milky Way, and that was the best I can get for my histogram. Because there's no blacks, I mean, this is really no true black right here. We don't have a spike that's separate from the midtones. We have dark sections of the image down below, above, and this horizon that kind of blends completely with the other midtones of the image. So my histogram, the importance here was just to make sure that it was crossing the middle and that I was exposing to the right enough. A histogram like this, where I'm light painting some of the subjects, they pop up a whole different gamut of information here. And so you're looking at the big old bunch of blacks, a lot of blacks in this shot, but I made sure I exposed over to the middle, and I'm satisfied with this. This might even be a little underexposed, honestly, but I was at ISO 10,000, so I was seeing the issue in the histogram, and I tried to get it a little higher, pushed it to 10,000, but I wanted to keep 8 seconds because my June challenge, I also liked having the same lens, same settings, different locations, and it's been awesome to be able to look at these and have them be that similar to each other. So then we look at Goblin Valley. Goblin Valley, we didn't do the information here, but it's a high elevation location as well as a dark sky site with a close city at Hanksville. And you're looking this way, you're not looking at Hanksville, so you don't have any of those problems. But look at the histogram. We're light painting this terrain, and it is completely different. There's no gap. So when you start doing low-level lighting, you'll see that you don't have that spike, gap, hump. You're not going to have the ease of that. You're not going to have something, don't do the disconnect. You're not going to have the ease of something that is just so obviously a perfect histogram. You're not going to get that because you're light painting. But still, you can make sure you expose to the middle and you stay off the left. Don't underexpose it so much that there's harsh clipping on the blacks, but don't overexpose it too much where you go past the middle too much. So then, oh wait, that's not how I changed the image. We've got the Crater Lake shot. This one actually has the gap and then does a little bit more because there's some light pollution right here that I'm seeing beyond the lodge. That light pollution was Klamath, all of this area down here. And I might even be the distant Klamath Falls area, honestly, looking at how this is hitting the clouds. If there weren't clouds there, I wouldn't see any of that. But because there are clouds, it's hanging in the sky higher than the light pollution normally would. It has a canvas for the light to hit off of and glow. And so that makes a different histogram here. And lastly, natural bridges. I am light painting this part of the bridge. And so it's a whole different histogram. So the histogram is your best way to do it, but if you're light painting, make sure you do the histogram before you light up anything, and you'll see this histogram. You'll see this. You can expose for it as long as your core is up in the air and you have that section of sky that you're focusing on, and you don't have so much. Like if I had not lit up that bridge, look at this. This bridge was not lit. I'd have a ton of black in here. Look at how much black I have anyway, even with it lit up. I would have a big old thick section of black and tall, and just a big chunk of my image would mostly be the black tones in my histogram. And so if I didn't, it won't be exactly like this histogram in this case, even if I don't turn my light paint on, but it's just do your histogram before your low level lighting so that you can see this histogram, get an idea for your settings, and then just go for it. Go for it. So, boom, boom. Yes, I wanted to, I should show the outcome images just for fun, and I'm skimming all through a bunch of pages. Sorry for the dizziness here. And let's go back. And I want to show you guys some of these images and how they turned out. So let's go to PA photos. Is it going to be in here? Some of them are in here, some of them are not. So Milky Way retreat, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not. Aaron's Picks 2018. Go back. And here we are with at least the Salt Flats Milky Way, that showing it again is just so self-serving. But this right here is my favorite images of 2018. And that light pollution, we played with it, and it turned out to be something we loved. And so even though technically, let me move this screen up. I'm going to move this closer to the page, and I'm going to pull this over while I do that. Even though this location isn't the best, Salt Flats, light pollution 3, lower altitude for the Milky Way, pretty high, but not the highest. Actually, in fact, the ones we checked was the lowest elevation of all of them. And yet, my favorite image came out from there. So don't look at your locations and say, well, this isn't high enough, this isn't low level light pollution enough to be any good. It can be freaking amazing. So then, let me look at the other ones. I'll go to here. Bum. I don't know why, but I always go to that Twix commercial whenever I have a gap in saying something. I'll do that. Bum. And I don't think it's even a perfect match with how it went. But if you're over 30, you remember that Twix commercial when they're breaking it and spreading the caramel. It's a great commercial. And here is my pano at Goblin Valley. You can see how that turned out. You can see the Milky Way core has not been dodged and burned, and so this is a little bit less showing up than it could have. And we'll go to natural bridges. We'll just use this image to quickly show it off. That's not coming through a very good focus right here, so I think what's happened is I've taken an Instagram picture and I've blown it up in this so it looks a little fuzzy. And let's go to that natural bridges final shot. So after that, I got a lot of good clarity, and I would say I kept this. Despite it not being that 50 millimeter 1.2, I was able to keep this from overexposing, and yet it's still a little overexposed in Lagoon Nebula. Just a little. It could have been better with a little bit larger aperture like that 50 millimeter and with a pano. And so the last thing I want to show you is the outcome of oh yeah, the Oregon Crater Lake pano. That Milky Way pano, man. Oh, it's just so beautiful out there. You can see it already. I said that Goblin Valley was not dodged and burned. This one is not as well. This is not dodged and burned. And look at how glowing it looks in that corner. Just crazy glowing. Loving it. Oh, man. Geez. Okay, so let me stop talking about my own images this way. I feel like a fake, a fraud, just a self-loving fool. But the core at Crater Lake, if you haven't experienced it yet, please join us and Kaveh and Mary Beth. No, I don't think Mary Beth is joining us, but Kaveh and Kathy are joining us out there at Crater Lake this coming year. So check out our workshops at photogadventures.com and join us as well, because Crater Lake is brilliant, and we go there in June when this panorama time is happening, and we have 2 nights to get it right. 2 nights. So please come join us, and maybe we'll get lucky and this light bloom won't be crazy bright, because I won't have as much atmospheric over there to paint. And so could be fantastic. And so let's go back here. Let's do our final list. We have conditions of the night that we've talked about, elevation changes that change things, light pollution in your area, photo pills telling us about the elevation and altitude of the Milky Way core versus where we were using the pin to pin. So that location, all of those conditions change how your Milky Way looks. And you know what, guys? When you have a camera that has a different lens that you feel like is just not quite strong enough. I saw on there, Mary Beth said, I need to get a new lens. Well, even then, she could do a panorama and make that image 10 times better. Imagine if you had the strongest focus, the best exposure setting, and you went and zoomed in on the core and just focused right there and took a shot, took a quilt of the core, and then pieced that quilt together in a panorama and saw that even at the zoomed in levels it was clear. Then you pull back and you look at it like it is right here. Oh man, it just shines. It glows. It's amazing what changes in a panorama. It's not just because now your detailed focus is now so small you can't tell that it's out of focus. It's not just that kind of clarity. It's detail in the core, detail in the image that is the core right here. When we pull out of this image here versus a panorama image of the same location, come on, pull back. You can see the difference. You can see the sandy, wonderful texture versus the mud and milk that happens with a single image that's a little overexposed and maybe a little out of focus too. And so just take care. Gigapano, let that be the message of 2019. I'm going to go out there and get a brighter, clearer, texture-rich Milky Way core. And if you're lucky enough to have a star tracker, if you're lucky enough to have something with stacking that you're talented and you know how to use Sequator or Starry Landscape Stacker, and you can take lower ISO images, stack all those up with longer exposures, and do a panorama even, then you can bring out the color tone of all the stars, that color temperature, the blues, the whites, the reds, the golds. I mean, those are really fantastic, and we turn them white so often with our exposures, and that's just the cut of ISO. You turn a higher ISO, all your stars will be white. And so you got to be careful of that. There's a lot of things to consider, guys. A lot of things to do that you need to have changed on your camera. Oh, Kaveh can't wait. Yes, me neither. Oh, man. And Kaveh, I'll tell you right now, I owe you an email, but we both will be joining you at Faroe Islands. So there's been some changes to that because I read your email and I've been thinking we got to make a change. So Kaveh, personal message just to you. Can't wait to go with you to Faroe Islands in April. So Gigapanel for Utah in May. Let's do it. I mean, we are going to be out at Goblin Valley, Goosenecks. Okay, Goosenecks is not a great time to do a panel because we do transition, but we'll talk about that. Mary Beth. Oof. The Chicago connection is jamming their names together in my mind. Kathy, we'll talk about that at Goosenecks. But man, Natural Bridges and at Goblin Valley is the best case for serious Gigapanel, but Natural Bridges will be fun too. Oh man, okay, Kathy already knows. So Mike Maxwell says, yeah man, Sequator is sweet. It really is, and it handles your foreground very well, and it's free. So check out Sequator if you're on a PC, or buy. You can actually use Sequator on a Mac too, or you can buy Starry Landscape Stacker. So if you guys have any questions, hit me up right now. You've got 2 minutes. We're going to hang out here until this hits 8:08, and I'll be on here looking at these pictures going, oh man, I just got to steal Brendan's 50mm f1.2 and take some shots because I love how this turned out. I love it. And this is a Tamron, and I love my Tamron. I'm actually really fond of my Tamron. In fact, if I look at Aaron King's pictures, let's look at PA photos. Pick one that I'm really like. Ooh, yeah, the dry wash. Let's do that one. I love that Milky Way. And so this Milky Way I'm showing just so I can wait for any questions that are coming through. This dry wash, guys, it is so overgrown now. We had a great spring 2 springs ago, and so this wash completely filled up with growth. And so what looks like these amazing detailed cracks in the mud are now filled in with bushes, cat of nine tail, or just a bunch of really cool grass. I can't remember what that grass is called with the cattail grass, but maybe it's just cattail. And where's the final image? Come on. Where's your final image, King? Is this it? Okay, before flatten, after Nick. These are TIFF files, so they'll take a second. And Nick is the Nick collection. I haven't used that recently, but I really loved it. So any questions come through here? I can't type. Hey, Aaron, feel free to jump on Skype and test the stuff I got today when you're done. Yes, I could, but I need to do it later, Rob. Let's talk about it when I'm going to get on with Kirk as well. You can join in on that conversation. So Kathy says, I'll trade Brendan an hour of that lens for an hour of my tracker. I'm sure he'll take it. That'd be awesome. Absolutely. And Rhonda Pierce says, I bought myself a star tracker for Christmas. Ooh, yes. I hope you got that good deal that was coming out recently. And how's the Canon 16 to 35 2.8? That is a great lens for astrophotography. Now, comparison for zooming in. It's an f2.8, so I imagine it's really close to the Tamron and how it works there. But that Canon Mark III, by the way, Mark III is great glass and better glass than this Tamron 15 to 30. So the sharpness is there and it comes out differently. It's one of the things that in 2019 I will be able to take time and compare side by side. So I'll be able to answer that question better, James, in the future. I know I've used it for Astro, but I've only used it for a couple times, and it's been through Aurora, not true Milky Way core tests. And so I can't pull one up and say this is how it looked and give you that answer. And so and looks like no questions are coming through, and this right here is also not coming through. But the final image of how this turned out, just loved it, and I can probably find it faster with Aaron's Picks 2016 and the dry wash right here. Yeah, that's only 800 wide or 800 tall. It's tiny, and yet it still takes that long to open. Something else must be trying to open, but you can see it right there in the preview. That's how cool it was, and I used the Tamron 15 to 30 here, and because it was a pano, I think the detail on all of these PSDs, okay, there's a JPEG. The detail on the core is there, but it's going through light pollution. This is a lower res version for Facebook. That's why, and Instagram actually, because it has this edge. I put this border in there so I can put it square in the Instagram. But yeah, 15 to 30 Tamron still has a great way to create awesome lenses. How about the Sigma 24 to 70 2.8? I would say that's fantastic, and with the 24 millimeter, that's plenty of space, and I would do a panorama with it for sure. But I personally haven't used it. I haven't used that one yet. And rented 14 millimeter f1.8 Rokinon from borrowlenses.com. So Mike's got that. He's experienced that 14 millimeter Rokinon, which can be a hit and miss with that 14 millimeter Rokinon. And it's an f1.8. Isn't it an f2.8? That one. I think that 14 millimeter is an f2.8, but I could be mistaken. I could be mistaken, Mike, because I know that the f1.4 or the 24 millimeter Rokinon is a huge benefit, and that's what makes that 24 millimeter even better. And it is an f2.8, man. It is f2, and you probably meant f2, but you said f1.8 on here, so you probably know about that. Astro Landscape, that is. Charles Talham says, how was the Fuji X-T3 for Astro, coming from a Canon 6D user? I've used Canon 6D, and the Fuji system, I've seen good Milky Way photography with this Fuji system. You have a great EVF, an electronic viewfinder, and you have the situation of putting your eye up there with your Carson Lumiloop and having that change on you, so you have to make sure that that gets turned off. But depending on your lens and depending the way that you handle it, I'm fairly certain that I'm confident I can say that an X-T3 will be a fantastic camera for it, especially if you wanted to go with a lighter camera body and not deal with this giant of a beast that I love still. I'm not taking that smaller camera revolution yet. I haven't jumped onto it. So soft in corners at f2.8. Many things are soft in corners. In fact, even my Rokinon. This Rokinon right here, in one of my best focuses, you can still see not just soft, but it has the angel wings, and this is at f2. And so this is cut down, and I think right now my Rokinon lens is starting to get a little out of, what should I call it? Like, it's not synced, it's not aligned, calibrated. And so I think my lens has gone through a lot, and it used to get rid of that when I went down to f2, even in the corners. And so there's some changes that need to happen. I think I need to buy another Rokinon, but you can see how towards the middle of the lens, there's still orbs, small orbs, but just a little bit more stretched than I was hoping to see in this Rokinon. So I should go. There's a lot of lenses and gear that we can talk about, but tomorrow we're on Gear Time. I do not know what Drew and Brendan are doing for Gear Time tomorrow, but there is a giveaway of a Mindshift bag. If you join us for Gear Time tomorrow at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, we are filming live, and those who share that the live has started on Facebook and shared it with people, we're going to see that. I'm going to be watching it from my desk and see who shared it, and we're going to look at all those and put them in a big list and then run a raffle, and the winner will get a Mindshift filter holder bag. Check our Facebook post. Brendan's posted over there on our Facebook page and our Facebook group. You can see the details of it there. So awesome. And can you send it back? I think you're talking about one of the lenses that we have. You absolutely can if you get it before, certain, depending on where you bought it from. I would definitely buy a lens with a 14-day, 7-day return policy and then test the heck out of it before you give up. But hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for being a part of Photog Adventures this year, 2018. Ever since the beginning of our, the beginning of our third year, September 8th this year, we started doing these lives. And I've been really impressed that you guys have hung out with me through this whole time. Even on Halloween night, you guys were out here with me, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm Aaron King from Photog Adventures. I'm signing off. I'll be back in January 7th. The actual night will be January 9th. I'll be back January 9th of 2019. So see you guys then. Enjoy your holidays. Enjoy your break if you're getting out of work, and just get out there with the camera and capture a shot with the snow and have all those distracting elements out of your composition and just gather something amazing with the snow blanket that's everywhere. Have fun with that if you even get snow. We haven't had any yet, so I wonder if you guys will. So see you guys. Thank you. Have a good night. And thank you guys, as always, everybody. Catch you guys later. See you, Dave. See you, Cheryl. See you guys. I'm going to hit stop on this end, so have a good one. See ya.